President Bola Tinubu has called for a complete overhaul of the global financial architecture governing Africa's mineral resources, saying it was time for African nations to not only finance their own mineral sectors, but also assert their influence and control over African products' global supply chains. This, the president stated, had become necessary if African nations' sovereignty is to be protected, just as he recommended collective action by development allies and partners to bring Africa's mineral economy to reality for the benefit of the continent.
Nigeria just did something no one saw coming, and Washington is stunned. Overnight, one of America's biggest, most powerful companies was kicked out of the country, and the ripple effect is already shaking global markets. This isn't just a business move. It's a message. A message that Africa is no longer playing by old rules, no longer bowing to foreign pressure, and absolutely no longer letting outsiders control its future. What Nigeria just pulled off is bold, risky, and could change the balance of power between Africa and the United States forever, and the real shocker. This decision wasn't made out of anger, it was made out of strategy. Nigeria is protecting something big, something valuable, something the US didn't expect them to defend this aggressively. Stay with me, because the reason behind this dramatic expulsion might be the start of a brand new era in global politics, one where Africa finally holds the leverage. Nigeria has just delivered one of the most unexpected geopolitical shocks of the decade, and Washington is scrambling to understand what went wrong. A massive American company, one that has operated in Nigeria for years, shaped markets, influenced policy, employed thousands, and expanded US soft power across West Africa, has been abruptly kicked out. Not scaled down, not sanctioned, not warned, completely removed. And this sudden expulsion did not come quietly. It came with a message that the era of American dominance in Africa is cracking, and Nigeria is no longer afraid to make bold moves, even if it means shaking one of the world's most powerful nations. To understand why this moment is so explosive, we need to go back to the roots of the relationship between the United States and Nigeria. For decades, American companies saw Nigeria as an essential market, a land of opportunity, a gateway to Africa. Nigeria offered a booming population, rich natural resources, young consumers, and strategic influence. And in return, America enjoyed access, leverage, and a huge economic footprint. U.S. companies operated in telecommunications, agriculture, tech, energy, finance, manufacturing. They shaped industries, they built reputations, they captured markets. Some became household names, but beneath that relationship was always a tension. A quiet tension rooted in competition, power, and who really benefited from deals. For years, many Nigerians felt that American companies extracted more value than they contributed, that they held too much control, too much influence, and too much power in sectors Nigeria wanted to develop independently. And for just as long, Washington assumed that Nigeria, despite being assertive, would never risk damaging the relationship. That assumption has now crashed. The moment the announcement was made, global analysts jumped into action. Stock markets reacted, industry insiders panicked. Even rival nations paid close attention, because this wasn't just Nigeria regulating a company. This wasn't merely a business dispute. It was a political message disguised as a corporate decision, a message rooted in sovereignty, national interest, and strategic self-preservation. The truth behind this story begins with Nigeria's increasing confidence on the global stage. Over the last few years, Nigeria has been aggressively pushing for control over its strategic sectors: energy, mineral extraction, infrastructure, finances, and especially digital markets. The government has been openly critical of foreign corporations that overstep local regulations, avoid taxes, manipulate pricing, or undermine local competitors. And as global power shifts toward the global south, Nigeria feels stronger, more empowered, more ready to challenge old hierarchies. Africa is rising, markets are shifting, and the world's traditional powers are being forced to adapt. But nothing shocked the world more than Nigeria's newest decision to remove a major American corporation entirely. The company in question held a deep presence in Nigeria's market, billions in revenue, massive offices, long-term contracts, long-standing influence. It shaped parts of Nigeria's economy in ways that few local companies could compete with. For the United States, it was a symbol of American reach and power. For Nigeria, it became a symbol of foreign dominance that no longer aligned with national ambitions. So what happened? Why now? And why so suddenly? Insiders say the conflict had been brewing for months. It began quietly with reports of regulatory violations, tax disputes, environmental concerns, contractual disagreements, security issues, and allegations that the company was undermining Nigeria's strategic development plans. Then came whistleblowers, investigative reports, and public pressure. Nigerian lawmakers demanded answers. Local businesses complained of unfair competition. And for the first time, the Nigerian government didn't back down. Instead, they launched a full audit, and that audit is what reportedly uncovered a shocking pattern of practices that Nigeria deemed unacceptable. At first, the U.S. company tried negotiation, then it tried lobbying, then legal threats. But this time, it wasn't enough. Nigeria held its ground. The government announced that the company had violated national standards, mismanaged local obligations, and operated with practices that threatened Nigeria's economic sovereignty. And with that justification, they issued the final decision, an expulsion order. Within hours, the country erupted with reactions. Some Nigerians celebrated, saying this was long overdue. Others were worried about jobs, investments, and the long-term economic impact. But the overwhelming sentiment was that Nigeria had finally taken a stand, and one that many African nations have been too afraid to take. Meanwhile, across the ocean, Washington was furious. U.S. officials demanded explanations. Lobbyists entered emergency meetings. The company's shareholders scrambled to salvage their investments. The U.S. Embassy issued statements urging Nigeria to reconsider. But Nigeria refused to reverse course, not even a little. And that refusal sent a message across Africa. You can stand up to global giants and survive. Behind the scenes, this decision was not just about one company. It was about shifting geopolitical power. Nigeria is increasingly being courted by China, the Middle East, the EU, and other emerging players. The global competition for influence in Africa has intensified dramatically, and Nigeria knows its value. With 220 million people, massive natural resources, a rising tech ecosystem, and one of the fastest-growing youth populations in the world, Nigeria is no longer begging for foreign investments. It is choosing them strategically, carefully, and with conditions. This U.S. company found itself on the wrong side of that shift. Many analysts say the final trigger was Nigeria's desire to protect something big, something strategic, something the company was interfering with, whether intentionally or not. It could be energy. It could be minerals, it could be digital data, it could be national security. Whatever it was, Nigeria decided that the risk of allowing foreign control was too great and the benefits of reclaiming sovereignty were worth the temporary turbulence. The company packed up its operations, and for the first time in years, a major American corporate empire was visibly, undeniably defeated in an African market. But the bigger question is what comes next. This move will embolden other African countries. Kenya, South Africa, Ghana, Tanzania, Rwanda, and Ethiopia have all expressed concerns about foreign corporations manipulating their markets. Many have already implemented new regulations, new taxes, and new controls. Nigeria's bold step will inspire others to be more aggressive, more protective, and more demanding. For the United States, it signals a wake-up call. Africa is no longer a passive partner. It is a rising global actor, and Nigeria, being the continent's economic powerhouse, is leading that shift. Washington will need to rethink its approach. The old playbook of diplomatic pressure and corporate influence is becoming outdated. The world is changing, and Africa is no longer accepting deals that don't serve its long-term interests. But this story gets even deeper. One of the most important consequences of this move is what it means for local Nigerian companies. For years, they struggled to compete with international giants that had massive budgets, advanced technology, insider influence, and global networks. Now, with this U.S. corporation gone, a huge market has opened up, one that local businesses can now fill. This could ignite a new wave of innovation, investment, and competition in Nigeria. New leaders may rise, new industries may grow, new jobs may be created, local companies may finally gain breathing room to expand and thrive. And while some people worry about the short-term economic fallout, others argue that this is exactly the kind of shock Nigeria needed to reset its economy and build long-term independence. Critics in the U.S. media claim Nigeria made a huge mistake. They say foreign investors will now be afraid. They argue that the decision was too radical, too abrupt, too hostile. But Nigerians push back, pointing out that other countries, China, India, Brazil, Saudi Arabia, routinely regulate or remove foreign corporations that don't align with their national interests. Why should Africa be any different? The heart of this issue is sovereignty. Who gets to control Nigeria's future? Who sets the rules? Who benefits from its resources? For decades, foreign powers answered those questions. Now Nigeria is answering them for itself. In the broader global context, this move also highlights the changing dynamics of international politics. The West is losing its monopoly on global influence. New alliances are forming. Developing nations are becoming more assertive. Economic power is shifting from old empires to new players. And Africa is no longer on the sidelines. It is becoming one of the most important battlegrounds of global competition. For the United States, losing influence in Nigeria is not just an economic loss. It is a strategic loss. Nigeria is the largest economy in Africa, a key energy supplier, a digital powerhouse, and a major player in regional politics. Losing ground there weakens America's standing on the continent, and if more U.S. companies face similar challenges, Washington may soon find itself struggling to maintain relevance in a region it once dominated. But there is another angle to this story, an angle many people are overlooking. The U.S. company's expulsion may force America to engage with Nigeria on more equal terms. Instead of assuming dominance, Washington may now need to negotiate, collaborate, and respect Nigeria's growing power. This could actually lead to a healthier, more balanced relationship in the long run. One based on fairness, not dependency. One based on partnership, not pressure. Inside Nigeria, citizens are divided. Some see this as a brave act of national pride. Others worry about economic consequences. But almost everyone agrees on one thing. Nigeria is no longer afraid to stand up even to the world's biggest superpower. This entire saga also raises deeper questions about globalization and whether large multinational corporations should still have the kind of power they wield across emerging economies. For years, these corporations operated with minimal oversight, maximizing profit while contributing less than they claimed. Now governments are challenging that norm, and Nigeria's decision sends a loud, clear message. The age of unchecked corporate influence is ending. In the coming months, negotiations, lawsuits, diplomatic meetings, and public debates will unfold. The U.S. company may try to return. Washington may push for compromise, but Nigeria's stance is firm, and this event marks a turning point in the country's history. Not because a company was expelled, but because Nigeria proved it could take bold, decisive action even when the world was watching. This moment will be remembered as the day Nigeria signaled a new era, a more assertive era, a more confident era, an era where foreign influence is no longer automatic and every company, no matter how powerful, must respect Nigeria's sovereignty, rules, and vision for the future. The shockwaves will continue, new alliances will form, global powers will rethink their strategies. And Africa, especially Nigeria, will emerge stronger from this clash. Because the real story here isn't just that a massive American company was kicked out. The real story is that Nigeria stood up and the world felt it. So as we step back and look at everything that just unfolded, it's clear that this is more than a headline, more than a viral moment, and more than a dramatic political shock. What Nigeria has done represents a deeper shift taking place across the entire world, a shift in power, a shift in confidence, and a shift in how nations define their own interests in an era that is moving far beyond old alliances and old assumptions. The expulsion of a massive U.S. company is not the end of the story. It's the beginning of a new chapter where nations like Nigeria are rewriting the rules of engagement. The eyes of Africa are watching. The eyes of Washington are watching. The eyes of global investors are watching. And what they are seeing is a Nigeria that is no longer operating from a place of fear, dependency, or hesitation. This bold decision sends a message that foreign companies, no matter how large or powerful, must adapt to new realities. They must respect local laws, acknowledge national priorities, and understand that African governments are no longer afraid to say enough. But perhaps the most important takeaway is what this moment means for Nigerians themselves. For decades, the narrative around Africa has been shaped by external actors: what foreign countries want, what foreign corporations take, what global powers decide. This story flips that script. It's Nigeria asserting its own direction, protecting what it deems important, and making decisions based on the future it wants to build, not the future others want to impose. And yes, there will be debates. Some will argue that this decision could scare away investors. Others will claim that the short-term economic cost is too high. There will be critics, analysts, and experts offering their opinions from every angle. But even those criticisms prove something important. Nigeria's decision mattered. It had weight, it had global impact, it forced conversations that would never have happened otherwise. A small decision made quietly does not spark international reactions. This one did. For many Nigerians, this moment is both empowering and symbolic. It reflects a rising desire for independence, not just political independence, but economic and technological sovereignty. It symbolizes growth, strength, and a refusal to allow history to repeat itself in the form of external control. And for young Nigerians especially, this is a powerful reminder that their country is stepping into a new level of global influence. The world is paying attention to Nigeria more than ever before, and decisions like these show why. For the United States, the message is equally clear. If Washington wants to maintain strong partnerships across Africa, it must engage with mutual respect, not outdated assumptions. The old days of one-sided influence are fading. A new era of diplomatic balance is emerging, and countries like Nigeria are leading that transition. This moment could encourage healthier conversations, more equal agreements, and more transparent cooperation. But only if the U.S. recognizes the direction the world is headed. For foreign companies, the lesson is immediate and undeniable. Africa is rising, and the markets you once dominated without question will now demand responsibility, fairness, and alignment with national goals. Those that adapt will thrive. Those that refuse will be replaced. The world is full of competitors: China, India, Turkey, South Korea, and even African companies themselves, all ready to fill the spaces left behind by those who underestimate the continent's new assertiveness. And for Africa as a whole, this moment may become a turning point. Many nations have been feeling the same frustrations Nigeria acted on. Many have been considering similar decisions. This bold move may inspire a wave of reforms, regulations, and changes across the continent that collectively reshape how global corporations operate in Africa. It may even push African governments to collaborate more closely, sharing strategies and strengthening their bargaining power. But above all, this moment reminds us that power is shifting, influence is shifting, confidence is shifting, and Nigeria, with its massive population, rich resources, and rising global relevance, is positioning itself as one of the central players in this new world. So as the dust settles, one truth stands tall. This is not just the story of a U.S. company being kicked out. It's the story of a nation stepping into its strength. It's the story of Africa building a future guided by its own priorities. It's the story of a global order that is evolving right in front of our eyes. And whether the world agrees or disagrees, supports or criticizes, celebrates or panics, Nigeria has made its choice. And that choice sent a shockwave that no one, especially America, was ready for.